You became a bit of a rebel without a cause for a while, right?
Well, my mother died when I was 12. My dad remarried in a couple of years, and you know, I hadn't actually. I was trying to convince him to marry somebody else. You know, I mean, I was a teenager.
So you were in a sense the odd man out.
Yeah, and then he went back to Egypt.
Ah.
And there was you know, a lot of things he did over there in leadership and many ways, but went back to Egypt. And so
you felt abandoned?
I think so.
Yeah.
A teenager, you know, between the ages of, say, 14 and 17.
You were a Jimmy Dean kind of character with a black leather jacket and a Harley.
Oh, I always had, from the time I was 9, you know, when my dad came home, and he encouraged me to get a job. I mean, I collected baskets and sold them to the grocery stores. I collected beer bottles from along the road, and my dad said, go for it. I went into a bush and cut down Christmas trees and sold them all over the village of Madoc, and then my dad said, where did you get the trees? Took me to the farmer, made me give him all the money I just made for selling those trees. I said, hey, I'm 9 years old. You know, but so I had money.
Yeah.
So when I was 14, actually, I was about to turn 15. I got my license when I was 15. Huh. The day I turned 15, in those days in Toronto, there were actual people who had a heart that answered your letters, not computers, you know, that have to go by the book. There's no other way for a computer to do it but by the book. They don't have any heart.
That's right.
So it's not the same today. But so I paid cash for my first motorcycle. By the time I was 16, I had a Harley 74, which was the biggest Harley hog made at that time. And yeah, I was riding really in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what was right. I knew my dad and mom were right. And I was going to get right with God, but maybe just a little bit before I died.
Right. Like St. Augustine, Lord save me, but not yet. Yeah. But and I know the story of your conversion is a remarkable story, a car dealer, and we'll get to that another time. I want to shift here because this is all about fathers, and you are a father, you're a grandfather, you're a great-grandfather. You got 4 kids, you've got 16 grandchildren.
Yep.
And as we speak, maybe number 5 of your great-grandchildren
is on the way.
Is on the way.
Yeah.
I have seen you in action as a dad, not often, but on occasion. I've also seen a lot of video of you with your family. I've seen you rolling on the grass with your grandchildren, playing volleyball, jumping in the pool, going out of your way to make their lives a joy. This was not something you experienced as a child growing up. How is it that you have been such a hands-on dad yourself?
Well, I think that happens a lot to young men, particularly, also young girls. I've met a lot of men whose dads were alcoholics. I mean, thank God, your dad is a great man of God, and just to be emulated in every way. But I've seen people whose dads were alcoholics. Yeah. That determined, I am never going to touch a drop of alcohol. Look what and if I did take that first drink, you know, that might be the first of 1,000 drinks, and I'd end up like my dad, and I never want to be like my dad. So that kind of turns them around. Maybe there was a factor like that I wanted to pay attention to my kids, but I don't think I didn't want to camp on them either. You have to lay back and let them be themselves. I remember I never bothered my children. Ron Mainse, you know, who works with you here on Huntley Street and all the time. Ron, and you are both executive producers within the organization here of Crossroads CTS. And Ron would have been about 14. And one morning he came down. I was normally gone, but he came down ready to go off to high school. I said, Ron, when's the last time you had a strong time of prayer, where you prayed, as St. Paul said, with the Spirit and with the understanding also? And he looked at me kind of surprised, and he said, why, this morning, Dad? I mean,
he's 14.
That was not what I was like at 14. At 14, I was running the other direction. My dad, you know, had headed off, and I just, kicked over the traces, the whole thing. But the kids have served God.
Yeah, you have 4 children,
Yeah.
and all 4 of them have followed you into various kinds of ministries.
Yeah.
for a period of time. You had both of your sons working with you. Now Ren has become really involved in a ministry in his own right. Ron, of course, still involved here. Ellen with Nazar, involved in a worldwide Arabic language ministry
around the world.
And then Elaine with Bruce, involved in vital children's
ministry.
God Rocks.
Elaine's daughter, Cheryl, is the official children's evangelist for the Billy Graham Association.
I mean, who knew?
How do you like that?
I mean, who knew? Who knew? Well, but the point being, David, and I'm not intending to flatter anybody here, but how many times do you hear of preachers' kids who...
By the way, Norma Jean warned me, never blow your nose into the microphone. I'm sorry, Tim.
Yeah, well, you've only been a professional broadcaster for 50 years, David. Now I've lost my train of thought. No, so often you hear of preachers' kids who just want nothing to do with the ministry because they feel that their mom and dad put the ministry ahead of them. Obviously, your kids didn't feel that way, and they want to emulate you. It could very well be your grandchildren might be following into your footsteps in the ministry as well. What would you say to dads out there who are concerned about their children's spiritual needs?
Yeah, it's God first.
Yeah.
Your wife and kids second.
Right.
Second, yeah. Only to God himself. And the two are practically united because our relationship with God is as a family. Right. He's Father. Jesus said, our Father. And even some of the most liberal types, you know, who say, well, Jesus really didn't say that. The apostles made it up. They all agree. People like Crossan and others, they all agree. At least Jesus said, our Father. You know, I mean, I think they're full of hops, but, you know, our Father.
Yeah.
That was what Jesus came to bring. The message that God is a loving, Heavenly Father who loves his children. And just like my dad knew I was going astray, but he never hammered me on it.
Yeah.
He knew I had to work that out myself. Yeah. And he still loved me. I never doubted that he loved me. And that's the way it is with God. God refuses to turn any of us into robots or puppets. Mm-hmm. That's why we have to come individually and in our own free will and say, God, I need you. Please, God, forgive me. You know, I've really done it all wrong, and you're the one that's right, and I'm the one that's got to change. So here I am, Lord. You know, I'm back, and that's what I had to say to God when I did return. But the work, whatever it was, when I was a church pastor, I hosted television. I had lots to do. But I'll tell you, my wife and my kids were my top priority to minister. I would have been a basket case, useless to minister to anybody else if my family had fallen apart and were not serving God. Yeah. And so I was just so totally determined. And, you know, Norma Jean tells me I'm actually quite stubborn, but there's a good stubbornness as well, Jim.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think this is a great note to end on. The Lord first, your wife and children second, and then your work follows after. And you have practiced that for well over 50 years, David. It is exemplary. Thanks for sharing your heart with us. And happy Father's Day.
And by the way, I'm back this week sometime. I don't know the exact date, but I'm in Sudbury, where you and I first worked together, Jim.
That's right.
Years and years ago for our Thank You Canada event in the city of Sudbury, Northern Ontario.
Well, there you go. What goes around comes around. David Mainse, thanks so much.
Thank you.